Hey everybody, it's Andrew here to show you guys how to build this budget sheet on Google Sheets. It's a pretty intuitive way to track your expenses and reconcile your accounts without having them actually attached to your Google Sheet. So it's a foolproof way to stay on top of your finances and have it very nice, easy to read with colors. Here, I'll show you an example just before we jump right in of me typing in one of my expenses. Let's say it's a $500 for rent. And you can see it automatically updates everything for me. It's updating my checking account. It's making the colors pretty easy to read and percent savings as well. So if you're interested in this, stick with me and I'll show you how to build this. I'll provide you guys with a template and I'll walk you guys through the steps. What I'm going to try to do is talk pretty briefly about this. I'm going to try not to go into too much detail because I would rather have a quick video that you guys can pause and then go back and look at rather than having a whole hour-long video that you guys have to sit through just in case you miss something. And if it was me looking at this, I would want a budget sheet that I could build that'd be pretty easy, and I wouldn't want to sit through an hour-long video. But I promise you guys that if you do stick with it and you put in a little bit of the legwork here in the beginning and you front load that sacrifice, having a sheet like this, you can use it on your phone. It's you can actually make a little shortcut for it, so it brings it right up. It's very easy to use. It's just a couple clicks. You don't even have to type much, just a description and the amount and the date. Other than that, it's just 2 clicks. And I've been using it now for about a year. It works really well, and I can stay on top of all my checking, credit card savings, all those accounts. So it is worth it. Just front load that sacrifice, stick with me, and try it out for yourself. So we're going to jump right in. First things first, I have this little template that I made for you guys, and it might look a little different when I give you guys the link. I might play around with it to make it a little easier. But what I'm going to do is just show you guys how to build it. First things first, what you're going to want is your categories. Over here, you can see that I have all the categories listed. Depends how you like to budget and how many categories you use. But for this, I'm just going to use 3 different ones: rent, gas, and food. Pretty easy stuff. And this is all going to be above your total expenses line. Below your total expenses line, you're going to have other type of transactions, other places you put your money that wouldn't be necessarily expenses. So for me, I'm going to go retirement, savings, and investment. Just 2 different areas, one for expenses and one for others. So from here, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go down to our category column. You're going to click on this first box, highlight all of the boxes, and then you're going to go data and then to data validation. Here on your criteria, click list number of items or list of items. And here what we're going to do is add all of the categories separated by commas. So rent, gas, and food. Click save. And you can see now, instead of us having to type in our category each time, we can just click. And because we use a couple different equations on here, we can't have any misspellings, or else it won't track it properly. So this is a foolproof way to kind of make sure that everything's getting tracked properly. So we have our categories. Now we're going to type in our planned amounts for each category. It takes a little bit sometimes to figure out what you want your planned amount to be. But for this, I'm just going to say your general amounts. Now we have our categories and how much we plan to spend. And now we're going to put in some forms of payments, some different ways that we plan on spending that money. We're going to do data validation again. Again, go to list number of items. And what we're going to do is type in some different ways that you can pay. I'm going to go with check, cash, Venmo, maybe use Cash App, any sort of app, credit card, debit card. And we're going to do another one for a bank withdrawal or deposit. I'm just going to do W/D. And this is what allows us to track cash going in and out of our checking account without worrying about the cash that we have in our wallet. So that allows us to track cash, which is something that a lot of apps don't let you do. But that's how I have it set up. So you add that extra line in for bank withdrawal or deposit. And to add on that, you're going to go back to your categories. You can hold the shift button, click this first top cell, hold the shift button and click the bottom cell. Go back to your data validation. And what we're going to do is we're going to add 3 different categories in here. These are just little categories that any budget sheet will need. And that's going to be bank transaction. Again, this is how we're going to track our cash. It's going to be a way to just track it without having to worry about it. We're going to have credit card bill. It's another thing that can throw apps off. And income. So now we have our categories and our forms of payment set up. That looks good. All right, next step is going to be putting in some code. So whenever we're typing in some code in Sheets, you hit the equal sign first. Equal sign, and we're going to type in sum if. Now, what we're going to do is a lot of copying and pasting. So for this first one, just stick with me. If you don't understand it, just kind of use the same form that I'm using, and you're going to pretty much copy and paste the rest of it. So this is just the first tricky part. Just kind of stick with me through this part, and then from there, it'll be smooth sailing. So sum if, we're going to highlight this category column. Remember, you can hold shift and click that bottom cell, or you can drag it. You can have it and you can click each one with shift or just hold the bottom right like that. So it's going to be reading this categories. We hit comma. It's reading category to read for the word rent. So we're going to put rent in quotation marks, another comma. And if it reads that word rent, it is going to then add whatever amount it sees in the corresponding cell along that row. And that will mean that it's getting spent. Close that parentheses. Now, just to show you guys how that works, so it's not just a bunch of blabbering, here's $10. And if we put rent, it's going to say, it reads that word rent. Now it's at $10. Say we spend another 40 here. The rent, it's going to go up to 50. And that's how that works. Now what we're going to do is for every column, we also add the amount for the money coming in. So that's money coming out. This is money coming in. So you do minus, a minus sign, sum if. The same kind of thing where we're reading the category column, comma, in quotations, rent, and then we're going to do another comma and highlight coming in and close parentheses. There we go. So we spend $500 on rent, or let's just say we spend 800, something like that, something random. And then our roommate gives us $400 for rent. So right now we're at 800, you can see. And now it goes down to 400. That's how the equations work. And that's what we're really going to be copying and pasting. That's how a lot of this works. So what we're going to do is just then copy. And in this next one, paste. And instead of having rent in this column, what we're going to want is gas, because that was our next category. And then again in the food column. And this time we're just going to add food as the word. It's reading the same lines and the same columns, but let's test that out. Let's say we spent $20 on some food. Is it going to read it? Yes, it will. Awesome. Perfect. And then we have our total expenses line. All we're going to be doing is just adding up these amounts to have our total plans, and then our total spent and our total remaining. So here we have a sum. Ooh, that didn't work. We have to open that parentheses before selecting the boxes. Sum of those columns. So it's going to add each one of those. Perfect. We have $1,600. Same thing here. Just a sum of all these columns, all of our categories. And then in our remaining amount, another equal sign. What we're going to be doing is our planned amount minus our spent amount. And that allows us to have our total remaining. We spent $0, we have 1,000 remaining. Take the bottom right of that and just drag it down. And that's an easier way. Instead of having to type everything in, you can just autofill it. It'll track it. So it's a pretty smart program. So it'll be able to keep up with you. So there's all of our categories in this style, and our planned amount, our spent amount, and our remaining amount. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to insert a chart. And this is going to be the chart, the pretty chart over here that kind of automatically updates with everything that we're doing and shows you how much you've spent versus how much you have remaining, and also tracks your total down here. So what we're going to do is first insert chart, and then under chart editor, go to setup, chart type, 100% stacked bar chart. Stacking will be 100%. Get rid of these two selected items at the bottom. Get rid of this third series. For your first series, let's move the chart out of the way. First series, hit the square, select data range. Get that out of the way too. We're going to select our spent amount. Click OK. And then down on the second series there is, click the box again, and you're going to then go and highlight remaining. So series 1 is going to be your columns for your spent. Series 2 is going to be your column for remaining. Now we're going to customize this, make it look a little better. Go to customize, chart style, background, none, border, none. Select maximize. Chart axis and titles, we're going to get rid of any titles. We don't want a subtitle, we don't want a vertical title. Oops. We don't want a horizontal title. Go to series. What we're going to do is then do bar 1. Fill color is going to be red. This is your money that is spent. You're going to choose that red. That looks nice. Bar 2, green. This is the amount that's remaining. Green is good. Got a lot remaining because we haven't spent anything. So you can tell it's already coming together. Legend. We don't want a legend, so we're going to go none. You can, let's see, we can skip these sections. There's nothing there for us. Grid lines and ticks. Get rid of major grid lines. Major count, let's go none. See how that's looking so far. I don't think there's anything on vertical axis. No, there's not. All right, perfect. So now we have this big, huge chart. Let's try to get this a little smaller. Drag it by the corner to make it smaller. Let's position this to make it look a little nicer. You can play around with this, make it look however perfect you want. I will say that it stays pretty much the same size and looks good on your phone as well. So you don't have to worry too much with it, but make it look good on a computer. It's easier than trying to do it on your phone. All right, look at that. That looks perfect. Let's test it out. So let's say we spend $50 on some food. There we go, food. We have, out of our 500 planned, we've spent 50, and that means we have 450 remaining. You can see that there's still a lot of green left. Let's say we then go and we spend, let's say, $1,000 on rent. We max out our rent. So rent gets maxed out. You can see of our total expenses, that's a big chunk. Takes a lot out. It looks pretty good. Everything's looking good so far. All right, so that's with that section. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move over to our amounts. The way we track our amounts, the big thing that you have to remember is each month you're going to be taking your previous month total and you're going to manually put it in right here. So if you're just starting out, you're going to manually put in your amounts that you have in each one of these accounts. Right now I have $1,000 in my checking account. Let's say I owe 200 on my credit card and maybe another 1,000 in my savings. Now remember that your credit card amount is going to be an amount you owe. So that'll throw us over or throw us for a loop when we're doing our sum if, but just stick with me and follow the format. So from here, we're going to do the same style of thing with a sum if function. So what we're going to do is equals sum if, open this parentheses, but instead of reading the category section, we're going to be reading the form of payment section. So if in the form of payment section, it reads the word anything now that is going to be coming out of your checking account. If you have multiple credit cards, again, all you're going to do is just name the credit cards what it is. You know, for my Amex card, I just have it, American Express, I just have it labeled as Amex, or for my Chase card, I have it as Chase. So I do have multiple credit cards, and you can have multiple savings accounts, and it will all work. You just have to make it specific. Instead of labeling it as checking, credit, savings, have it as Bank of America, Amex, Chase, and that way it'll be a little more intuitive. This is just a general way. So for anything coming out of my checking account, that will be all of I have my checks. You can see over here, I'm going to get rid of that for a second. I have my checks, my cash, my Venmo is hooked up to my checking account. My debit card is going to be hooked up to it. Well, I quick correction, cash is not going to be connected to your checking account. Your bank withdrawals and deposit is going to be connected to your checking account. Cash will not be. Now, just to reinstate that, because even that throws me off. And I remember that was a fix that I had to make a couple months into using my budget sheet in order to track properly for cash. Cash will not go through your checking account. It's only banks withdrawals and deposit, because what's happening is unless you're physically taking that money out of your checking account or putting it in, that cash is only seeing the inside of your wallet. It's not going to see the inside of your checking account. And what the purpose of this is to track your checking account amount. So to log into your online bank, you're not going to have an amount that reflects how much is in your wallet right now. It's only going to be the amount that's either been withdrawn or deposited. So what we're going to do is we're only going to be tracking our withdrawal deposits, debit cards, Venmos, and checks. Those are what's going to be going through our checking account. So just to then go back to this, we have our check, and it's going to be reading the form of payment line and in our checking account, and it's going to be then taking any amount that we're coming in. So our checking account is going to go up anytime that money's coming in. And then just the opposite, if that check, let's say that check was going out, it's going to be reading the form of payment, comma, parentheses, check, and then that money going out. So we subtract this sum if, because that money is now leaving. It's a check going out of our account. And then we can hit enter right here. Now let's just try that out real quick. We have a check. We're paying some rent money. This money's going to be going out. It's $800 going out for rent. Let's see what happens. So we see we went negative. What happened here is we forgot we have to add, or what I forgot is I have to add the previous month total. I didn't add this previous amount total. So this is K8. That is the column and row, K8, just to make it easier on me. So what I'm going to do is up here, I'm going to do K8. I'm going to add that to the whole function. There, now we can see our previous month total is reflected. That was my bad, I missed that part. So now that we have our previous month total, and then it's going to add any check that we get, and it's going to subtract any check that we send out, we know we're now left with $200. And also you can see up here, this all updated as well. So there's two different things going on. A way to track your actual accounts and to actually track your budget all in one. It's great. Perfect. So that looks like it's working well. Now what we're going to do is then you fill that in with the rest of them. So what we can do is just copy and paste. Like I was saying before, the legwork is really just setting it up, and then you can copy and paste a lot of it. So now instead of check, we're going to do Venmos. Venmo is just an app that I use to transfer money. It's like Cash App or Google Pay, anything like that. You can put all of those in if you use all of them. And then again, let's do another paste for the next. And that was a bank W/D. Now, when you're typing these in your quotations, make sure that they're actually working. It'll behoove you to actually check that each transaction works and you didn't make a little typing error, because if you accidentally type or misspell one of these words, it won't track properly. So really up in this section, make sure you're spelling your words correctly, and you can always go and check afterwards. So let's just check with bank withdrawal deposit. Let's say I find money on the ground and I find $20 and I then go and I throw it into the bank. I found $20. And I'd probably put that as income because sure, I found some income. There we go. it's now our checking account is showing 220 because I just went and I put that into my account. Now let's say that I go and I already had $40 in my wallet, and this was before, and it wasn't anything to do with my checking account. It was just money that I had in my wallet. I'm not withdrawing it. I'm just spending it. So let's say I'm at the gas station and I spend $40 in cash. I choose to pay in cash. And let's go for gas. So what you can see is because this money was in cash and it wasn't a withdrawal from my account, it's not messing with my checking account. All it's doing is playing with the amount for gas that I've spent. So it's just going to our budget up here and it's not going to our account. And that's how I track for cash. That's kind of my loophole to be able to then have money in my wallet that I can spend without feeling like it has to just be gone, because I'm still tracking it on my budget. That's how I do that part. All right, so to get back to where we were for our checking account, there we go. We have check, Venmo, bank withdrawal and deposits. What else do we have that we need to put in here? Debit card, that's our last one. All right, perfect. Let me paste the last one and change this over to debit card. Perfect. There we go. All right, so this is all set up. Our form of payment, our descriptions, categories, it's all looking pretty good right now. And you can tell that it looks pretty complicated. So if you have this set up, you can show your friends and it looks pretty cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to our credit card. This is, remember, it's the amount that we owe. So $200 isn't a necessarily good thing to have in our credit card amount. It means that we owe $200. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a sum if in our form of payment we see credit card. Again, you can make this your specific credit cards and have you as many as you want. If we see that it says credit card, then there we go. We're going to add all of the money that has gone out. And then we subtract any amount that's coming in, like for our credit card bill. So in our form of payment, credit card, and money coming in. Oop. All right, and money coming in. All right, there we go. So now let's try it. So I put it on my credit card. I'm just going to Irving to get some gas. And what I do is I usually put like the company name in my description so I can go and I can look at it. I spend 20 bucks on gas, real cheap. So there we go. Oh, again, remember, I didn't add the previous month total. That's my bad. I missed that again. So this is K9 is the previous month total. So again, remember, K9, add to your whole total. There we go. It's all set up. Now, one thing though, a little loophole again is you want to be able to pay off your credit card, and you want to be able to show that it's coming out of your checking account and it's going to take down your credit card amount. So that's a little tricky thing right here. You can see on this section, I have direct deposit as well. And I just use that as a, right here as I subtract, or I subtract and add. I just have it a little differently. What I do is the way I kind of get around this is I use this almost direct, or let's see. Yep. So right here, the credit card bill, I subtract sum if for a credit card bill. What I'll do is I can make a form of payment that's more of a, you can technically put it as your debit card because it's coming out of your bank account, or you can make a different form of payment as a almost direct deposit. So it'd be directly getting routed from your checking account into your credit cards. So what you do is, right now I don't have that set up for direct deposit on this one. I won't go back and change it, but let's say you would set it up as it's coming out of your checking account. So on your debit card, your credit card bill And then what we're going to need is you have your credit card bill right here. So we subtract the sum if it reads in your category credit card bill. This is a little funky, and I know I'm doing a poor job of explaining it, but if you just follow the form, it will work. Then this section, and there's some theory behind that, but that's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to do subtract the sum if it reads the category section says credit card bill, then it's going to add the amount that's going in there, and that's your little loophole. Doesn't really make sense, hard to explain, but it works. So let's just show you that. So right now we have our credit card, we owe 220. Our checking account is at 1,000. Let's see if this works. Like I was saying before, I should have added a form of payment that says direct deposit or just an online one so that it's just coming out of your checking account. But for the sake of this example, I'm just going to show it as a debit card because it's coming out of your checking account anyway. So it's coming out of your checking account. It's your credit card bill. I'm going to say I'm paying 220. So I'm paying it off. My category is credit card bill. And now look at that. Our checking account has gone down $220. Our credit card has gone down to 0. So that is how we can track our credit card bills, paying off our credit card bills through our checking accounts. That's a little complicated. I know, I'm sorry, I might not have explained that properly, but if you just follow this form right here, you will make it work. And that's the same thing to go with cash and cash withdrawals. This took me a couple months before I was able to get it down right because there was a lot of playing with it, try to get it to go right. So a lot of that just kind of came to me over time. Might be a little difficult for me to explain, so I apologize. But then to move on, then we have our savings. And you can see, I'm just going to show you guys now because I feel like you guys got the gist of it. On my savings, I add my previous month total. And then if in this section, so G, let's see, in this categories, I see savings. If in my categories, I see savings, and you can see I have all my stuff down here. This is where I put my other expenses, is in my categories. I have my investments, savings, retirements, all these categories. So if I see savings, it's going to add this amount, which will be coming out of our debit, because what's going to happen here is, let's say well, what happens for me is I transfer out of my checking account to get to my savings. So I usually have money coming into my checking account because that's the lifeblood of our finances is in our checking account. Money comes in. So let's see, we got our paycheck, money comes in. Then to go to savings, I'm going to do direct deposit. That's, again, just like the last example, how I paid that credit card bill. Direct deposit, putting money into savings. I'm going to put $200 into my savings, not 2,000. Boom, into savings. You can see savings went up. Savings has gone up here. Checking account has gone down. Again, just to show you this, you can pause and look at that. That's what you're going to want for your rows and columns. Again, just a big picture of your checking, and again, just of your credit card. Now for the rest of this, you're going to have your other expenses. This is just another chart, the same thing that we did up here. And just to show you guys, because what will happen is you're going to probably over time change your categories. I'm going to move this guy out of the way and show you how you can add a category. Just move that for right now. It might get a little funky. Oh, I'll show you that afterwards too. So I'm going to add a category right here. Let's say I've been doing it for a while and I feel like I need another one for education. All right, so what do I have to do? First off, I have to figure out how much I'm going to put in there. $100 for education. The amount spent. I'm going to copy this. Put that right there. Change this over to education. Hopefully I spell it all right. There we go. Education. That's all set up. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're also going to add it into our categories. I'm going to select that, go back to data validation. And we're going to throw in a comma and education. There we go. So now it's added into all that. and it's up here on our budget. Perfect. So now we change our chart. Double click your chart, go over to setup. Now we're going to change our series. Again, click that box. Series 1, you select the whole series set for spent. Series 2, select the whole, almost went a little too quickly there. Drag that down so it has this amount. There we go. Go back to our chart real quick. Setup. Series 2, let's see, right there, F4 to F8. Perfect. So now we've added one of our categories. All I have to do is just then drag this down a little bit and make it line back up. That's perfect. And that's how you add a categories. Again, you're going to do the same thing down here. Once you have your planned amounts, do your sum if for the spent, subtract planned from spent for remaining, and then add your chart. Go back and watch how I added that chart. And don't forget about your totals. But down here in your total amount, what you'll see is I added this top section of expenses, not your total, and then this second section. And so I'm adding all the money that I've spent this month. This is just the way for me to track my expenses. And then up here, we can see this is just another gee whiz thing up here for our income. All we have is a sum if to read for income in our categories. So by now, you can probably understand the sum if function a little more. It's reading our categories section to see for the word income. And if it sees it, then it is gonna add the amount that's coming in. That's how I get this income amount. Then for expenses, all it is it's just adding this amount. And again, this, I can probably just make it easier and say this is this. That's all it is. Our expenses is just our total expenses right here. So look at that, made an improvement already, right there. That's our expenses. And percent savings. This is just how I get it to show as a kind of percent. I take my income over my expenses times 100, and then I subtract it by 100 so that it gives me a nice percentage that I can look at. So there we go. I'm at 75% savings. And remember, every time that you're going to be making a new budget, what you're going to want to do is take your whole first sheet before you start plugging it all in. This is a big important part. I should have mentioned this earlier, but before you have any expenses in here, once everything's all set up, you're going to want to make this your actual your permanent sheet that's going to stay blank. So what you're going to do is you're going to rename this your template. And your template is what you're going to duplicate every month. So you duplicate, and here you can see now we have another little section. You duplicate and you rename. Rename this to May of 2021. And that's where we are now. So now I can go ahead and start typing away, plugging in amounts, whatever I want to do, but my template will always stay the same. So then I go back to my template. When I hit the next month, I go over to May, I go and I reconcile, I pull up my, my credit card amount online, and I check the amounts and I make sure all the transactions are perfect. I put little X's in there for all my reconciled amounts. And then what I'll do is I'll go over to back to my template. I'm going to duplicate it and rename this next one to June, my next month. What I'll do is I'll take these amounts that are in my checking, credit card, and savings, and I'll transfer those over to my next month. So this would, and then what you can do is then you go and hide. You can hide your sheet. So now you're just working off your June. You can hide all this other stuff. And when I'm just working off my budget, all I have is just my current month. And that's pretty much the basics of it. If you have any questions, just feel free to leave a comment, ask me. I know I probably missed a few things. I try to keep it brief. It's a tough thing to keep brief just because I have spent so much time on it over the months. So any questions, let me know. I can make another video to explain certain parts of it, but I will provide a template to go along with this. And if this helped at least one person, then I think that's a good thing. So thanks for listening and enjoy the rest of your day.